Well, thank you for having us here, and thank you, John, for engaging in this debate. I'm looking forward to your questions. I'm a prosecutor, not a politician. You elected me back in 2010 because you wanted politics removed from the district attorney's office. You didn't want the DA's office being used as a political platform for special interests or as a stepping stone to another governmental position. You wanted your DA focused on the constitutional function of the district attorney's office. You wanted decisions that were based upon the law and justice, not upon self-interest, politicians' whims, special interests, that sort of thing. You wanted to see justice administered fairly. You wanted to see the culture in the district attorney's office changed in such a way that the office would operate more efficiently and more effectively. And I would say to you, ladies and gentlemen, that I have followed through on the commitment that I made to you. I have put together a team of excellent prosecutors and support staff that have focused on doing justice and ensuring public safety without regard to what politicians might say or how it might be reported in the media, with total disregard for special interest, because that's what justice requires. During my administration here, 3.5 years or so, we've had an unprecedented level of success. We've had 1 aggravated murder trial and 4 murder trials during that time, which itself is unprecedented, moving the cases that quickly through the court system. And those trials resulted in 1 aggravated murder conviction and 4 murder convictions. It doesn't get any better than that. We have had an unprecedented level of success with all of the major work that we've done, and for that matter, the minor cases. Our Victims Assistance Program is operating at a much higher level than it ever did in the past. And in part, that is what you will need to pay attention to in making a decision here who to vote for. In fact, I would say the most important factor is the qualifications of the 2 candidates. What experience do they have? Do they have a record that shows a commitment to public safety and justice? Have they prosecuted murder cases, Major 11 cases? Have they worked with children who've been victimized? Have they shown a commitment to our community? I've been doing this work in the criminal justice system for over 25 years now. 22 of those years right here in Deschutes County. I was a deputy DA for you back in the 90s. I was a chief deputy DA in the 90s until about 2001. And I've had the privilege and honor of serving as your district attorney. And so I would look very carefully at the qualifications and at the record, because the record of the district attorney's office and my personal record as a prosecutor is something that you can verify and is not subject to dispute. And it will tell you that when May 20th rolls around, or when you cast your ballots, that you should be checking the box to re-elect Flaherty. There's a reason why I have endorsements that are very meaningful to me personally, to my office, and I believe that you'll find them meaningful as well. They're not just politicians, they're not special interest groups, they're not people from out of Deschutes County. I have the endorsement and support of the Deschutes County District Attorneys Association. Those are my deputy district attorneys. I have the endorsement of my Chief Deputy District Attorneys. The Bend Police Officers Association and the Deschutes County Sheriff's Association have endorsed me because they know what my record is. They work with my office. They know the record of my office. And complemented by that are a number of other endorsements, notably Crime Victims United of Oregon, that nonprofit that pays special attention to whether a district attorney protects the rights of crime victims. So I look forward to your questions, and I thank you for coming this evening.
John, we're going to give you 6 minutes because that's about what Patrick took. Please.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes? There you go. Good evening, everyone. Thanks to the Redmond Patriots for hosting this. Patrick, good to see you tonight. Thanks for participating. Everyone here knows Deschutes County is a special place. In fact, it's the greatest place in the country to live. We do things differently here. I think people who have lived elsewhere know that, and all of us who've traveled know that. Our politicians in Deschutes County aren't like the politicians in Washington, D.C. Thank the Lord. Right? Our politicians, we see them. They're us. They're on our soccer fields. We see them in our churches. We see them volunteering for our nonprofit associations. They are us. And most importantly, we see our elected officials working together with the community to solve our problems. I'm that type of leader. If you elect me as your district attorney, I'll work as part of a team to keep our community safe. I'll work with law enforcement. I'll work with drug and alcohol counselors. I'll work with mental health professionals. I'll work with neighborhood associations. I'll work with elected leaders. I'll work with everyone in this room. Together, we can keep the community safe. No one person can keep the community safe. Not at all. This county is the best place in the country to live, but we still have work to do. Still work to do. Let me tell you a few areas where I think we need to continue to do good work and do a little more. In regard to mental health, we have to work together on this. The sheriff's office and sheriff's deputies in the jail are doing a great job. The Deschutes County Jail is the largest mental health provider in the county. They're doing great work, but we need to do more. We need to do more to make sure that the people in our community who are suffering from mental illness get the help they need, while at the same time, we're keeping our community safe. In regard to drugs, we need to treat people who can be helped by treatment, but we need to punish people who can't, particularly people who are dealing drugs to our kids. In regard to veterans courts, some of you may have heard this, and I reached out to Patrick on this. We both agree that the community needs a veterans court. The short summary of a veterans court, for those of you who don't know, our brothers and sisters who fought for us overseas and risked their life and come home damaged. We see many of them with prosthetics because they've lost an arm, and we need to help them. But some of our brothers and sisters also have mental health issues when they come back, maybe PTSD or drug and alcohol issues they're struggling with. If they have a misstep along the way and get a little sideways with the law, I think we owe it to our brothers and sisters to see if we can help them rather than punish them. I know Patrick agrees with that too. But here's the difference. We've been talking about a veterans court for a while. I'll actually help deliver a veterans court. We don't have a veterans court. I was involved in creating the first specialty court in Central Oregon, the Crook County Drug Court, almost a decade ago now. You create these specialty courts working together as a team. No one person does it. You got to work with the courts. You got to work with drug and alcohol professionals. You got to work with mental health professionals. But for a veterans court, you have to work with the VA administration. I'll work together with everyone, and we'll get that court. Other areas where we need to work on. We need a leader in the district attorney's office who understands that the government's money is the people's money. There's been over $1 million of our tax dollars squandered because of management issues in the district attorney's office. That's not going to happen if I'm your district attorney. Another area we need to work on, we need to have consistent application of our criminal laws. Too often in the district attorney's office, how cases are handled is based on the connections they have. We need to trust that our laws are being prosecuted even-handedly, regardless of how powerful you are, regardless of who you know. And finally, we need to work with law enforcement to develop even more innovative and cost-effective crime prevention programs. Our law enforcement are doing great work on that, but we can do even more. The best way to keep a community safe is to avoid crimes in the first place. Well, obviously, if a crime doesn't occur, you're safer than if it does occur, but it also costs less money to prevent crime. Less money keeps you safer. That's a pretty good deal. But for all of those things I just discussed to happen, we need to work together as a community. And we need a leader in the district attorney's office who's out in the community, working together, not saying it's my way or the highway, not looking for the glory, but looking to work as part of a team in the community. I want to be that district attorney, and if you elect me, I'd be honored to represent you. Thank you.
Okay, now we're into the both area. Same question, both candidates. And Patrick, I'd like to start with you on this one. And rather than me explaining Measure 11, would you please explain Measure 11, how it's perhaps changed, and where you stand on Measure 11, and I'll ask John where he stands on as well. Please?
Sure. Yes, be happy to. So, Measure 11 is the ballot measure that we voted for by almost 80% here in Deschutes County back in 94. It was 94. And what Measure 11 does is it imposes mandatory minimum sentences for the most serious crimes in our community. First-degree sexual offenses, so rape 1, sodomy 1, unlawful penetration 1. Second-degree offenses include rape 2, sodomy 2, unlawful penetration 2, sexual abuse in the first degree. Also under Measure 11 are violent crimes, other violent crimes I should say, assault in the first and second degree, robbery in the first and second degree, kidnapping in the first and second degree, and of course murder, manslaughter, criminally negligent homicide is outside Measure 11 right now. But the policy reason behind mandatory minimum sentences is a decision that we made, that our legislature made, and that I support 100% because I've prosecuted the cases I've seen and worked with the victims many times over the last 25 years. And it is that for certain offenses, we do not want the individual to be out in our community for a set period of time. We want to protect ourselves. We want to incapacitate that person, and we accomplish that with Measure 11. One of the reasons Measure 11 came about is because some judges, and of course this is across the state, I'm not saying anything about judges in Deschutes County now, but across the state some judges were imposing sentences that we all believe to be too lenient. On the heels of Measure 11, because it was proven so effective at reducing violent crime in Oregon, we began to enhance Measure 11 sentences as mandatory minimums. Jessica's law is a notable enhancement. So when a person...
Can we say that for
Sure.
a specific question on Jessica's law? Your time is almost up.
So to wrap it up on Measure 11, I voted for Measure 11. I prosecute Measure 11 cases. My office, I believe, exercises keen discretion with who we charge with a Measure 11 offense. I know that my opponent here voted against Measure 11 and said he would do so again. And that causes me deep concern.
Let's hear that from him. John, you're up.
Thanks. I wasn't here when we voted on Measure 11. I came to Oregon in 95. Measure 11 is the law of the state. prosecutors have to enforce the law. Sometimes I get concerned when I hear judges, prosecutors, anyone who's not a legislator talk about their personal opinions about the law. Legislators make law. That's a legislator's job. So I would expect legislators to tell you what they think about a law. I want to hear a judge say, whatever the law is, I'm going to enforce it. I want to hear a district attorney say, whatever the law is, I'm going to enforce it. Well, hear me say this. Whatever the law is, I'm going to enforce it. Now, you want to hear my opinion, so I'll give you my opinion on this. Those serious offenses that Patrick shared with you, I have no mercy for people who are doing those things, for adults who are doing those things, okay? Lock them up, no mercy here. I will tell you this. I have a place in my heart for a 15 or 16 or 17-year-old kid who makes a mistake, a silly mistake, but maybe a mistake that, but for the grace of God, many of us would have gone away for a long time for. We wouldn't have been able to get in the military, wouldn't have been able to get into college, wouldn't have been able to get a job, have to be on public assistance our whole life because of something stupid we did. I think there's a place, if the state wants to do it, if all of us voting wants to make a change to Measure 11 for kids, I think that's something we can talk about. But if that doesn't happen, that's the law, and I'm going to enforce it. I'm not going to legislate from the DA's office, just like I don't want a judge legislating from the bench.
Thank you. Okay, John, you get to go first on this one. In a heinous and notorious murder case, would you ask for the death penalty even if you didn't personally believe in capital punishment, which is Oregon law? And furthermore, how do you feel about Governor Kitzhaber not enforcing the death penalty?
Thanks for that question. You kind of got a preview of my answer here. Capital punishment is the law. But implicit in that, too, is capital punishment has a great deal of discretion for a district attorney on whether to impose it or not. What I would do if I was district attorney, and I know Patrick does this too, essentially agree on this, you create a team to make this most important decision. No one person should make this. What's more important than, there's no bigger decision that a district attorney will make, whether to seek to take someone's life. So you do that after a good deal of deliberation with your team, with talking to the victims, talking to the victim's family, talking to law enforcement, looking at the facts, thinking about it. But if you do this study, and at the end of it, you think it's appropriate, yes, I would seek the death penalty. That's the law. And what do I think about what the governor's done? I agree or disagree. The governor has the authority under our Constitution to grant grant pardons and clemencies. I don't think it's appropriate to do it across the board. You have to look at each case individually. If the governor looks at a case and sees there's some particular reason the governor thinks there is an injustice done in that particular case, I think it's appropriate, whether I would agree or disagree with him on any one case. I would say that's an appropriate exercise of his authority to say that any case that comes in front of me, I've already made up my mind, and I disagree with that, respectfully, but I disagree with it.
Okay, thank you. Patrick?
Well, I have had the experience of prosecuting, being involved in aggravated murder cases for which the death penalty may have been appropriate. I haven't actually taken one of those to court, but certainly we've had that fairly notorious case here, the Guzik case that many of you are familiar with, that's up before the Supreme Court right now for the fourth time, and it may very well be coming back for number 5. And I would not hesitate to seek the death penalty in an appropriate case like the Guzik case. In terms of the governor's declaring essentially a moratorium on the death penalty, even in the case at hand over the defendant's objection, he does have the power to do that under the Constitution and the right to do that. I disagree with him exercising that power. particular case, however. So I think that it's important for everyone to appreciate that when we make a decision about a Measure 11 case or an aggravated murder, what penalty to seek, we're always doing that in collaboration with the law enforcement agencies that have investigated the case. Within the DA's office, we do staff those cases, and I would submit to you that no one has gotten a break or been treated differently based upon any characteristic, whether it's their status in the community, their race, gender. That simply has not occurred on my watch. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, next one. And Patrick, you might as well stay right up. You go first on this one. How do you feel about unionization of district attorney office employees?
I believe that district attorney office employees have the right to form a collective bargaining unit, and I've made my view clear on that, but I think there has been some misunderstanding. And when you refer to employees, I'm assuming that you mean the deputy district attorneys, or if we're speaking just about the deputy district attorneys, it's important for everyone to know that under Oregon law, a district attorney is required to appoint deputies. So when I was elected and went into office with a particular path laid out for me by the voters, I was required to exercise my right, and in fact the law required me to appoint deputy district attorneys. Now, the deputy DAs have the same power and function that the elected DA has. They can go into court and dismiss a capital murder case if they chose to, without communicating with the elected DA. They have virtually the same power and function as the elected DA, subject only to the DA's direction. And that is why it's so important that DAs be able to appoint deputy DAs that they believe will carry out their policies and objectives, that they believe will be trustworthy and honest in carrying out the will of the voters, because it really goes back to the will of the electorate in the election. They're similar in a way to cabinet members. It's really not a bad analogy. Now, when you ask the question about unionizing, I'm going to clarify my position. Okay, if deputy DAs are forming a union for the purpose of compensation, benefits, that sort of thing, they have a legal right to do that, and there's no contradiction in the law. But every elected district attorney in the state will tell you that deputy DAs must be at-will employees because of that DA appointment authority. And so if the sole purpose for the union is to make them just cause employees, or to take away the elected district attorney's right to appoint or discharge, then I would say that I would have an objection if that's the purpose of the union. But I'll tell you, much has been made about it in Deschutes County after my election, and I think it probably speaks volumes that the Deschutes County District Attorneys Association, that union, is endorsing me. Because that union was never an issue for me. And I just failed to communicate that as well as I might have with the media.
We need to move on.
Thank you.
And that's one of those cases where if you find you want to say more later on, either in your closing, crossfire, or whatever, I hope you're going to have the time to do it. I let you go on there, Patrick, for one reason. I think you weren't politicizing, you were explaining a little bit more. But John, I'm going to give you the 3 minutes that Patrick took. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Patrick and I have different management styles. When Patrick came into the office, he didn't have executive management experience. I do have executive management experience. I've led teams of 40, I've managed multi-million-dollar budgets for years. Here's my management philosophy. When I come into a new organization, I talk to my team, I'll say this. Well, let's make it real. Let's say if I win, I come into the VA's office, I'll say this. Yesterday was a campaign. Today's our first day of working together. Forget about everything from the past. Now let's talk about what we're going to do going forward. We're going to sit down together as a team. We're going to talk about our goals that we'll develop as a team. I'm going to share my philosophy, my vision, my expectations. I'm going to listen to the team, what they want to hear from me, what they want to tell me is important. And together we're going to craft a plan. And we're going to go forward. And if I see a staff member who's having trouble meeting the expectations, trouble meeting what they agreed to do, I'm going to sit down with them. I'm going to say, how can I help you? I want you to succeed. How can I help you? And we're going to try to make it work. If eventually, after, trying, it's not working, I'm not shy about removing that employee. But how are we going to do it? We're going to talk to the county attorney. We're going to talk to the human resources department. We're going to do it the proper way. And you know what will happen? If we have to remove someone at that point, they won't be able to successfully sue us. I'm not saying they won't sue us. Anyone can sue. I'm saying if they sue us, they're going to lose because we did it the right way. You know what that is? That's an efficient use of our tax dollars. And it also saves us money because we don't lose that lawsuit. Patrick will tell you that the employees he fired were bad employees. They needed to go. Well, contrary. We have a letter that Patrick sent to one of these employees. After Patrick was won, the election's in May, but the winner does not take office until January. After Patrick won in May, 3.5 years ago, but before he took office, he sent a letter to one of these deputies, a career prosecutor, great guy. No one has a bad word to say about him. The letter was very short. It said, I won't say the person's name here, but I will call the person Mike. That's not their name. Dear Mike, just want to let you know, when I take office, I'm going to be firing you. The reason for that is you supported my opponent in the campaign, and you didn't call me after I won. That's not the way you do business. It might make you feel good, it might make you feel tough, it might make you feel like a good leader. You know what it's going to do? It's going to cost everyone here, all of us, all our tax dollars. And as a result of leadership and management like that, we're all on the hook for over $1 million. You're not going to get that from me.
Okay. This was one of my favorite questions that got submitted. Some of them were pretty good, but this was one of my favorites. Using a 1 to 10 scoring system, 1 being terrible, 10 being wonderful, what is your opinion of Eric Holder's job performance as U.S. Attorney General? And that's a good one, right? You know it's a Patriots out there. And if you had his job, what things would you have done differently? And I really need to enforce a 2-minute time limit.
Well, if I go first, I guess that is going to be pretty easy for me to keep to the time limit anyway. I would give him probably a 4, and I really wouldn't date because I have not kept up with the U.S. Attorney's Office and how they've done. I've really been focusing all of my efforts on Deschutes County, and so my opponent could probably speak to that much better. But I would like to take just a little bit of this time to say that, first of all, the letter that he just referenced, that the language that he used is a complete misrepresentation. And I'm not going to go into that in a lot of detail, but I'll also say this. These lawsuits would have been filed and they would have been settled by the state insurance company. They were not lost. A federal judge, in fact, agreed with the basic principle involved that deputy district attorneys are at-will employees subject to the direction of the district attorney. That's why he dismissed the county out of the lawsuit. because the county had no authority to exercise any control whatsoever over the deputy DAs. And it also demonstrates that my opponent here doesn't understand that this is a state office. The county attorney is not someone that the district attorney can work with or talk to about deputy district attorney employment issues, because for purposes of employment law, they are state officers, just like the district attorney.
Okay, we got a little bit sidetracked on that, but I understand the rationale. You got a number for me?
Yeah, I do. I want to respond to that second. Only in bizarro land can a $750,000 verdict to a plaintiff be a win for a defendant. Those 3 people were fired. They got a $750,000 verdict, and Patrick wants to tell you we all won. Well, let's go out and celebrate after, okay? That was a loss to the taxpayers. Now, the question about Holder. I've got 2 answers on Holder. How the Attorney General handles criminal prosecutions seems like he's doing well enough. I don't know the details of that. But how he's handling other stuff? Well, actually, no. How he's handling courtroom prosecutions. In court, he and his staff seems fine. I'm not in those federal courtrooms, so I can't really tell. So I'll just say I don't know about that. But on other stuff here, got 2 things. The gun running investigation was absolute shambles. He put our country at risk by putting guns out on the street with illegal criminals down in Mexico to try to make an arrest. Well, there's a time and a place for doing things like that, but it's not giving guns to criminal gangs in Mexico. So he exercised extremely poor judgment on that. And his decision with President Obama to not defend gay marriage laws, not defend the defense of marriage, I disagree with that. I'm going to tell you this, I am a big proponent of gay rights, a big proponent of that, but I'm not the lawmaker, and President Obama is not the lawmaker, and Attorney General Eric Holder is not the lawmaker. Their job is to defend our laws. That's why I disagree with the Attorney General of Oregon, who said she's not going to defend the law in Oregon that says gay people cannot marry. I disagree with that law. I am a big proponent of gay rights, but I do not like it when an Attorney General decides she is going to be a legislator. She is going to decide what the law is. That is not the Attorney General's job in this state, and it's not the U.S. Attorney General's job. So on Holder, on that stuff, I give him a 2.
A 2, okay. We got a number. Okay, now I'm going to editorialize just because I can. Holder lost me completely, and I think he lost a lot of other patriots. When he looked at that videotape in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and he saw those guys with their nightsticks keeping Americans from voting, the new Black Panther movement, and he refused to prosecute them, he lost me completely. Okay? I personally give him a -10. Okay, that's enough of that. I had too much fun with it. I told you I like that question. Okay, John, we'll start with you. What is your attitude towards, and I'm going to put this, there's 2 questions here, I'm going to mix them together. What's your attitude towards private citizens being armed for their own protection at home and in public? And do you believe that law-abiding citizens should be free to select the firearms based on their own needs and without government interference as to the magazine size or the appearance of the firearm?
Thanks for the question. I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment, but what does that mean, right? Well, can a citizen own a gun? Yes. That we needed to overturn that decision, that case out of D.C., where Washington, D.C. basically said no gun ownership. That's a clear violation of the Second Amendment. I don't know what could be more clear. I don't support laws like that. I support the right of citizens to arm themselves, to protect themselves, to act in self-defense. Absolutely. No argument. Well, you got to look at the facts of the case, but generally, self-defense, citizen, arming themselves, absolutely. Open carry laws, I support open carry laws. If you have a right to arm yourself, you have a right to carry. It's actually safer when people are carrying openly than concealed. we allow concealed weapons permits, I support that. But if we allow concealed weapons permits, I don't see why we wouldn't allow open carry. Now, magazine capacity, I do support restrictions on magazine capacities. I don't know what the right number is. I'd have to look at that more. But I don't think, I've never known a hunter or someone who's defending their house who needs, capacity of 20, 25. I don't know what the right number is. I haven't given it enough thought, but there is some limit where I would say that makes sense to me. On the gun show issue, I support fixing that. If we all agree that we don't want mentally ill people to own guns, and we don't want felons to own guns, and I assume most of us will agree with that, and we all agree with the law that says if you go to Walmart, we're going to check you to make sure you haven't been mentally committed or you're not a felon, then why would we say if you go to the Deschutes County Convention Center here for a gun show that we don't do the background check on you? So background checks at gun shows I support, and a limit on magazines. I don't know what that number is, but I support open carry, self-defense, and the right of people to own guns.
Okay, Patrick?
Thank you. I certainly am a proponent of all the amendments of the United States and Oregon Constitution. It's one of the reasons why the DA appointment authority is important to me. But I certainly, I do support self-defense, carrying firearms openly, concealed if the person has a concealed handgun license. I believe that the regulations that are in place now, all the firearms regulations in Oregon, are appropriate. I don't believe that they're overly restrictive. I would oppose any effort to restrict them further. I'm personally familiar with shooting incidents where it had the person defending themselves or a third person not had more than 10 rounds in the magazine, they would have been unsuccessful. Let's put it that way. So I don't see a logical relationship between magazine capacity and the concerns that we have about people getting a hold of firearms. It's also true that there are millions of high-capacity magazines in existence, and we know that criminals will always get their hands on the AK-47 with a 30-round magazine, and sadly enough, if some mentally disturbed young person really wants to get a high-capacity weapon, banning them is not going to prevent them from doing that. There's simply too many firearms and magazines in our country.
Okay, you might as well stay right there. Thanks for not using the whole time. I'm not familiar with this case, but it came from one of our patrons. Because teenagers will be teenagers, and the scene unfortunately may repeat itself. How would you handle the case of the teenage boys who were racing their cars against two girls who were also racing? The girls lost control due to no action on the part of the boys and were killed. Mr. Dugan, the former district attorney at the time, claimed that the boys were at fault just because they were racing and chose to punish the boys to the fullest extent of the law. One of the boys spent at least 6 years in jail. Would you repeat Mr. Dugan's choice of punishment in a similar circumstance?
No. Well, this is a good question to talk about prosecutorial discretion and why it's so important that you have as your district attorney an experienced prosecutor and not someone that has absolutely no experience whatsoever as a prosecutor. It's also important that you have someone in this office that does not just mechanically apply the law, which is what happened in the Black case that the Patriots referred to, goes into the facts. Because in that particular case, there were a number of opportunities, and in fact, my predecessor it was suggested to him, I have very strongly that he changed his mind, and the prosecutors were required to go forward, and the judge had no choice. But that has not occurred on my watch, and will not occur on my watch.
Well, this is going to be the easiest question tonight that we both get. I absolutely disagree with that decision. That was a dark day in this county, and that was handled inappropriately in that case. You can't ruin a kid's life for a mistake like that. Just disagree with it.
Isn't it nice to have people that agree? Let's see if we can agree with the next one. And John, we're going to start with you. What is your position on legalizing marijuana for recreational purposes? And goes on. Do you agree with Obama, who commented, quote, "Pot is no worse than alcohol," end quote, or with the National Institutes of Health, which states, quote, "The toxic effects of cannabis on the brain may result in impaired neurophysiological functioning, poor academic performance, and subsequent school dropout." Where do you stand on legalization?
Okay, thanks for the question. You've heard me say this a few times, and it might be sound like a broken record, but I believe it in my core. District attorney does not make the law, just like a judge does not make the law. Whatever the state decides in regard to marijuana, that's what me and my office will enforce. Seems like we might have a ballot measure in November on this. If we do, we'll have the debate, and we'll vote, and we'll decide. Whatever the result is the result. What I have said is this. When I talk to people about marijuana, what I'm hearing is there is some, transition in the country, primarily with young kids, less so with older. But I think we all agree on this. The concern with marijuana, like any drug, is are kids using it, and are people driving under the influence of it? Right now, marijuana is illegal, and we got a problem with kids using it and people driving. If we legalize marijuana, no one's saying legalize it for kids. So kids, it will still be illegal for them to have it, and it'll still be illegal for people to drive under the influence. Those are the two biggest problems, kids and driving under the influence. We don't have enough money for enforcement for our current drunk driving laws, and we don't have enough money for programs for kids so we can get them on the straight and narrow so they don't need drugs to begin with. So if we as a community decide to legalize marijuana, we better put that money to youth programs to get these kids straight and to law enforcement for impaired driving enforcement.
I'm trying to learn how to use my phone in case anybody.
Here we go again.
I'm about ready to turn it off and use my head. I am. There it goes. Thank you, Lord. Patrick, please.
So I will answer the question, because I didn't hear my opponent answer it. I oppose the legalization of marijuana. Now, he's correct that the district attorney doesn't make law. He said this more than once in a couple of different ways. He doesn't legislate from the office. But again, that comes back to the concept of prosecutorial discretion. It's just like a Measure 11 case. It's not that simple. He doesn't understand it because he's never been a prosecutor. He's never led prosecutors. Every case that comes into the office, your DA has a decision to make about whether to file that particular crime. It's completely up to the district attorney. It doesn't matter what the police arrest the person for. If you take an approach like my predecessor did, and you just black and white, if the facts fit the crime, charge it, it's Measure 11, never negotiate it. That's how you have gross injustices take place, like the Black case. I would oppose and vote against legalizing marijuana because I know the damage that it does to our youth. I know that it will, in fact, result in an increase in drug or marijuana DUIs. Colorado has seen that already, and so has Washington. And of course, that means there'll be more vehicular assaults and vehicular homicides. And I know some of you here have been out on scenes like that. I don't want to see more carnage on our highways because people are impaired. I'm particularly concerned right now just with the availability to youth. I mean, we have the Medical Marijuana Act. If that's regulated, that is the law. We know in the city of Bend right now, we have some of the dispensaries that are in violation of zoning restrictions. Now, that's not going to be a district attorney function to fix that. That'll be up to the city to take care of that. But if marijuana is legalized, access will go up. Children will have more access, and it is extremely baleful and harmful for our youth. Repeated studies that show that.
Thank you, Patrick. And in all honesty, in all fairness, John, did you want to spend another 30 seconds and talk about it more, or are you fine? Fine. Thank you. Now this is a yes or no, and that's what we want, a yes or no. Starting with Patrick. How do you feel about trained school employees or trained volunteers carrying guns on school grounds when the local police cannot provide a school resource officer? Yes or no?
Yes.
Quick qualification, please.
Quick qualification is there's no reason why the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, DPSST, the same agency that certifies police officers, security guards, and others, couldn't put a program into place. And if we had that DPSST certification, I would be supportive of it.
Okay, good. John?
I don't support guns on school campuses.
Okay. So I go to the school and I see a gun-free zone, and if I'm a criminal, man, I got open hunting season.
Yeah.
Isn't that the alternative, though?
Yeah.
But I understand your point. Thank you so much. Now we go back to Jessica's Law, John. It was enacted in 2006. The House vote was 54-6. The Senate vote was 30-0. It required a 25-year mandatory minimum sentence for adults convicted of raping, sodomizing, or sexually penetrating a child under 12 years of age. And why did you oppose that?
Yeah, this is real interesting. I assume this is relating to what Patrick mentioned at the last debate. This is an interesting story. When I started as a public defender, a criminal defense attorney, then I opened up my own private law firm with 2 colleagues. For 6 years, a part of my practice was as a government relations professional. I represented small trade associations throughout the state who had issues they wanted addressed in Salem. One of my clients was the Trade Association for Criminal Defense Attorneys, and they would hire me to go to Salem and advocate on their behalf. One of the bills they wanted me to advocate on was that bill. That association's position was they were against that bill. Patrick slammed me trying to suggest I was against that bill because I made an argument on behalf of my opponent. But here's the real thing. I'm glad you're all sitting down. When Patrick was criticizing me at the last debate for doing that, what he didn't share was he was paying my salary. Patrick was a dues-paying member of the association that I represented. The dues he paid went to pay my salary to represent the position of that association. And now he comes here and says, how dare Hummel personally have that position? Who says an attorney personally represents the views of... When I represented someone who committed a murder, was I in favor of murder? That's ridiculous. I made an argument on behalf of a client. The client that he was a member of, that he paid dues to, and his dues paid my salary. So it's just absurd. It's only in politics can this twisted thing come out, but this is politics, unfortunately. Patrick likes to say he's not a politician. I tip my hat to him on that. That's one of the better political little tricks you'll ever hear. It's shameful. It's shameful.
Okay, Patrick?
I remember that 3-word phrase that he used for lobbyist. Okay? But he was a lobbyist for the Criminal Defense Lawyers Association. And as a lobbyist for the Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, he opposed Jessica's law. And I don't know if you know who Jessica was. It's a little girl from Florida, 9-year-old, that was sexually assaulted and buried alive. And that raised such an uproar throughout the country that our legislature immediately acted to enact that mandatory minimum. But my opponent also lobbied against other measures that would protect us from child sex offenders. He argued against and opposed extending the statute of limitations for child sex offenses. He argued and opposed laws that would have made it more, that would have enhanced law enforcement's ability to investigate DUI drug offenses. And it really is completely consistent for a politician to get up and make the pitch that he just did. He's very polished with it. I'm a prosecutor. Yes, for a period of time when I was in private practice, as probably just about everyone doing criminal defense work, I was a member of OCDLA. Did I oppose Jessica's law? Absolutely not. I can guarantee you that my wife, who's a member of OCDLA, most certainly would have supported Jessica's law as well. Because we both prosecuted those cases. I've worked with the victims. He never has.
Okay, this is one of those perfect things that if you want to discuss it later on in Crossfire, wide open, you can see the audience interest. Now, because we have more, I think that's the end of my both questions, and I'm probably happy about that. but since I have more questions from the Patriots for John, I'm going to go first, and I might do 2 in a row on some of these things, just so we're balanced. I'll never claim to be fair and balanced, but at least I'll try to balance. And this is one of those questions, John, that it was asked by maybe 5 or 6 Patriots, all in little different ways, and I've tried to put them together, and I'm going to lead off by quoting what you said earlier today, that Deschutes County is the greatest place in the country to live. I happen to agree with you. Do you really believe, and this is also politically incorrect, there's your warning. Do you really believe that working for the United Nations and the Jimmy Carter Foundation in Liberia, a war-torn third world country, provides you with relevant experience and sufficient knowledge to be Deschutes County DA? And what motivation made you leave Central Oregon and travel to Liberia in the first place? And I've messed it all together. Do you admire Jimmy Carter, who is considered by many people in this room to be the second worst U.S. president in modern history?
I think it's about 4 questions. I'll rush through it. I wish I could give them all time. I didn't work for the UN, so whoever got that fact got that wrong. I'll tell you why I left Deschutes County, why I did that work. But let me tell you why I came back. I came back because this is my home. Lived here since 1996. Had my first professional job here. Started a law practice here. Bought my first home here. My friends for life are here. This is home. This is home. I left because I had a passion inside to live and work internationally. If I didn't pursue it when I was young, before I had a wife, before I had kids, I might lose the opportunity to do it. So I did. I worked overseas. I helped a war-torn country, as the questioner said, rebuild their justice sector. Liberia was devastated after a brutal 15-year civil war. All the cops, prosecutors, judges, lawyers were killed. My team was invited in. I led a team of 40. We trained police officers. We trained prosecutors. We trained judges. How to run a functioning justice system. The United States is the greatest justice system in the world. It's not perfect. We could get better. But it's the greatest justice system in the world. And Liberians recognize that. And they called us in to help them. And I was proud to help them. And you know what? I worked for President Carter. He's the greatest former president we've ever had. We could talk forever about how he did as a president. As a former president, we can all be proud of what he's done around the world to deliver peace, justice, and health. And you know what the questioner didn't ask? Probably because they didn't know. Whoever the questioner, I'm not criticizing you, but you probably didn't know this. I also worked for George W. Bush, okay? I worked in the executive office of the president, in the office of the United States Trade Representative. I helped edit reports that President Bush sent to Congress, international trade reports. And that tells you a bit about me, okay? I look at the job at hand. I don't look at the label. I enjoyed that international work. I believed in George W. Bush's position on international trade, so I was happy to do that job. I believe in what President Carter is doing, delivering peace, justice, and security to Liberia. I was proud to take that job. I'm not embarrassed about it. It's absolutely relevant to keeping this community safe as we all struggle to do that. Thank you.
Okay, another editorial comment from me. I will be very proud of Barack Obama when he's a former U.S. president.
Oh, yeah.
I know my audience don't like it. Okay, I'm going to stay with John for a second, because that was just too easy of a question, right, John?
Well, that's my life. I can't get
Where's your life?
what I did, yeah.
Should the district attorney of Deschutes County have total control over which lawyers are hired to work for him in the DA office? And you've stated, if elected, you do not anticipate any staff changes at the DA's office, and the current staff is, in your words, doing great work. Am I quoted that correctly?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, now let me go on. So do you continue to have a favorable opinion of staff? Yes, okay? If yes, shouldn't the voters interpret that doing great work as a testimonial to the leadership qualities of the incumbent DA, Mr. Flaherty, or perhaps even his house cleaning?
Thanks for the question. The deputy district attorneys are doing great work in spite of the leadership.
Oh, good. Oh, my gosh. Oh,
How's it been the last 3 years? Over $1 million cost to the taxpayers? Is that working out pretty well for you? If you're all happy with that, let's keep on going. It's great. Don't
Okay, that's enough.
If you're happy with the results, then obviously if you're happy with the results, you're not going to vote for me. Look, we should have a leader who has an ability to have a good staff and also not cost the taxpayers over $1 million because of management problems. All right? The staff is excellent. I've worked with many of them. I don't know all of them. The ones I don't know, I've asked around about and heard good things about them. So I'm not going to be making any changes. One, even if I didn't like someone, that's not the case right now, but if I didn't like someone, I suggested this before, if I go in and fire him because I'm the boss, there's a new sheriff in town, hey, I'll feel good, maybe. They'll sue us, the taxpayers, we'll lose, and we'll pay. Okay? That's not my management style. Sometimes you want to be tough as a leader somehow because you're the boss. Well, you need to check your ego and understand you're there for the community, and you have to remember that the government's money is the people's money. I'll respect our tax dollars, and I will manage that office appropriately. And the staff is good right now, as I said.
Okay. Well, we as taxpayers are glad to hear that the staff is good. I think Patrick's ready. Are you ready, Patrick? You're chomping at the bit over there, aren't you?
Yeah, I'd sure like to respond to that.
Well, you will. You'll have time during crossfire.
Okay.
And you may have some questions that edge around it coming up. I start, my career was business, and I had a very wise boss at one time. And he told me a leader would be judged in large measure on three things: who they hire, who they promote, and who they fire. You've been criticized mostly by our friends at the Bend Bulletin for the staff terminations you made early in your tenure and the cost of the result of lawsuits. What's your response to this criticism? Does that handle what you wanted to say?
It does. Thank you. Because my opponent didn't answer the question that was put to him. And again, I'd say, I'm a prosecutor, he's a politician. There were 3 deputy DAs that filed a lawsuit because they believed that they were entitled to their government job. I did not appoint them. One of them lied to an elected district attorney during an internal investigation and he terminated her. Another lied to me during the application process. And a third caused 5 young female promising prosecutors to leave the district attorney's office because she created a hostile work environment and engaged in sexual discrimination. None of you in my position, understanding the obligations of the DA, would have appointed them. He's suggesting that he would have brought them on board. And he keeps talking about his management style. You know, that's all over the place. If you want to look at tax dollars, look at what my opponent did when he was on the Bend City Council. Okay, and that was not state tax dollars that came out of the state insurance fund. Those were City of Bend tax dollars. And it's in the millions. He was the only attorney on the board. We could talk about the buses, we could talk about Juniper Ridge, we could talk about the Bend Bulletin property. The deal he worked out because he thought that's where they built City Hall. That was one of his great management decisions. We could talk about the fact that he was a leading edge of the trio that fired Larry Patterson. Those of you who know Larry Patterson, who'd been a city manager, kind of like a chief deputy for the city for about 20 years. And after that, he went through a couple more city managers. No one has ever been terminated on my watch because I need to show I'm a big shot or something. I lead by example in the courtroom. I have the respect, and I respect each one of my staff. And all you need to do is talk to one of them. And that's what you'll hear.